My name is Elena, and I was 28 years old the night my father stood on my porch in the freezing rain, begging for a place to sleep. He had lost his business, his farmhouse, and his new wife, all in the same night. He was holding 2 garbage bags, everything he had left in the world, and when he looked up at me with those broken, pleading eyes, I did the one thing he never expected. I didn't open the door. I locked it. See, for 15 years, my father had systematically erased me from our family to fund his new wife's lifestyle. He missed my graduations, he drained my mother's life insurance, and he left me to survive on my own while he gave everything I deserved to his stepchildren. He thought I was the resilient one, the one who would always just figure it out. He thought I was still that same abandoned teenager he left in a basement a decade ago. He had no idea what I had actually been doing with my life, or why I was the last person on earth he should have come to for help. The look on his face when he realized I wasn't going to save him is a moment I'll never forget. But to understand why I felt absolutely nothing while my own father shivered on my doorstep, we have to go back to the day he chose a stranger over his own daughter. Welcome back to Reddit Drama Stories, so do like the video and subscribe the channel, because here we tell the stories that people are too afraid to say out loud. My childhood was actually incredibly happy. I know a lot of these stories start with decades of abuse, but mine didn't. For the first 12 years of my life, it was just me, my mom, and my dad. We lived in this beautiful, slightly run-down, wrap-around porch farmhouse on the edge of town. My dad owned a mid-sized commercial contracting business. He wasn't a millionaire, not by a long shot, but we were comfortable. He worked with his hands. He always smelled like sawdust, fresh rain, and black coffee, and he was my absolute hero. When I was 12, my mom was diagnosed with aggressive ovarian cancer. It was fast, brutally, terrifyingly fast. From the day of the diagnosis in a sterile, white hospital room to the day of her funeral, it was only 8 months. I watched my mother shrink away into nothing. I watched my father pace the hallways of our farmhouse, making phone calls to specialists who couldn't do anything. I remember the night after we buried her. The house was completely silent. It was a suffocating kind of quiet. My dad came into my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and held my hand. He looked me in the eyes, his face completely broken, deeply lined with exhaustion, and he said, "It's just you and me now, Elena. Us against the world. I promise you, I will never, ever let you feel alone." I believed him. I really did. And for 3 years, it was true. We were a team. We cooked burnt dinners together. We watched terrible, low-budget sci-fi movies on the weekends, and he never missed a single one of my soccer games. I thought our bond was unbreakable. I thought we were surviving the worst thing that could possibly happen to us, together. But I was too young to realize how lonely he actually was. And I didn't realize how quickly a lonely, emotionally exhausted man can be manipulated by someone who knows exactly what to say, exactly how to say it, and exactly what insecurities to target. When I was 15, my dad met Brenda. Brenda was a local real estate agent who was helping him look at a commercial property to expand his contractor storage. The very first time he brought her to the farmhouse, the entire energy of the space shifted. Brenda was polished, too polished. She wore expensive, heavy perfume that lingered in the hallway long after she left. She had this high, sweet, practiced laugh that sounded like glass breaking on a tile floor. And she had 2 kids from a previous marriage, Tyler, who was 16, and Madison, who was 14. I want to be clear here. I didn't hate Brenda initially. I wasn't the stereotypical bitter teenager trying to sabotage her dad's happiness. I was a grieving teenager, sure, but I wanted my dad to smile again. I tried to be polite. I tried to make conversation at the dinner table. But within the first month, I noticed the microaggressions. If you've ever dealt with a covert narcissistic step-parent, let me know if this sounds familiar. Brenda never insulted me directly. She never yelled. It was always wrapped in a compliment or a helpful observation or a tone of deep, fake concern. She would walk into my room, look at the vintage rock posters on my wall and the fantasy books piled high on my desk, and sigh. "Wow, sweetie, you're just so messy. It's cute how you don't care about your environment. Madison could never live like this. She's so sensitive to aesthetic energy." but it's good you're comfortable in clutter. Or she would watch me eat dinner and say to my dad across the table, "Elena has such a remarkably healthy appetite, Richard. It's so good she isn't obsessed with her figure like my Madison. Madison barely touches her carbs. You don't have to worry about boys distracting Elena anytime soon." My dad would just chuckle. He thought she was being friendly. He was so blinded by having a beautiful woman in the house again, so relieved to have the silence broken, that he completely stopped paying attention to how she was actively degrading his actual daughter. 6 months after they started dating, Brenda casually mentioned over a Sunday roast that the lease on her luxury apartment was up. My dad, predictably, practically tripped over himself to ask her and the kids to move into our house. I was completely blindsided. We hadn't even discussed it. I came home from school one Tuesday afternoon, exhausted from track practice, and there was a massive commercial moving truck parked in our gravel driveway. That was the exact day my erasure officially began. Our farmhouse had 3 bedrooms, the master suite, my bedroom at the end of the hall, which had a beautiful bay window, and a smaller guest room that my mom used to use as a sewing and crafts room. When Brenda moved in, she brought Tyler and Madison into the kitchen, clapped her hands together, and announced, "Okay, kids, let's figure out where everyone is sleeping. New beginnings." I was standing right by the refrigerator. I said, "Well, I'm in my room, and the guest room is open for whoever wants it." Brenda turned slowly and smiled at me, that cold, dead, terrifying smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, Tyler is 16. He's a growing boy. He needs the bigger room. Your room has the attached half bath, which he needs for his privacy. And Madison needs the guest room because it gets the morning light and she has seasonal depression. We thought it would be best if you moved down to the basement bedroom." My stomach dropped into the floor. The basement wasn't a bedroom. It was unfinished. It had poured concrete floors, exposed copper pipes running across the low ceiling, and it was always freezing because the insulation was terrible. I looked at my dad. I waited for him to step in. I waited for my hero to say, "No, Elena's room is Elena's room. She grew up in there." Instead, he looked down at his work boots. He rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit he had when he knew he was wrong. "It's just for a little while, kiddo," he mumbled, refusing to make eye contact. "Just until we can build an extension on the back porch. You know how to rough it, right? You're my tough girl. Tyler and Madison are having a really hard time with the transition of moving. They need to feel welcome." I remember staring at him, feeling the air completely leave my lungs. He was trading my comfort, my history, and my dignity to buy the affection of 2 teenagers who didn't even want to be there. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a fit. I knew instantly that if I showed emotion, Brenda would label me hysterical or unwelcoming. I just walked upstairs, pulled 3 black heavy-duty garbage bags from the kitchen drawer, packed my entire childhood into them, and carried them down the wooden, creaking stairs to the basement. I spent that first night shivering on a bare mattress on a cold concrete floor, listening through the floorboards as Tyler played loud, booming video games in the bedroom that used to be mine. I thought losing my room was the worst thing that would happen that year. I had no idea it was just the opening move of a systematic campaign to push me completely out of my own family. Over the next 3 years, the dynamics in the house completely warped into something unrecognizable. Brenda was an absolute master at manufacturing crises to keep my dad off balance. Tyler and Madison were never, ever held accountable for anything, while I was suddenly responsible for everything. Tyler was a nightmare. He was arrogant, deeply entitled, and constantly in trouble at school for skipping class or getting into fights. But Brenda convinced my dad that Tyler just lacked a strong male role model because his biological dad was a deadbeat. So my dad took Tyler under his wing. He bought Tyler a brand new, lifted Ford truck for his 17th birthday, claiming Tyler needed it to learn responsibility. Do you know what my dad gave me for my 17th birthday? A $20 gift card to a chain coffee shop, handed to me in a blank envelope, and a text message later that evening saying he couldn't make it to my birthday dinner because Tyler had a football game and family needs to support family. Madison was even worse. She was a perfect, terrifying clone of Brenda. She would wait until I was at my part-time job, sneak into the basement, and steal my clothes, my expensive makeup, and my school supplies. When I caught her wearing my favorite jacket and confronted her, she would burst into fake, heaving tears, running directly to Brenda. Brenda would then corner me in the kitchen when my dad was outside. Her voice would drop to a vicious, quiet whisper. "You are so selfish, Elena. Your mother clearly didn't teach you how to share. No wonder you don't have any friends. Madison is just trying to bond with you, and you treat her like trash." When I told my dad about these comments, hoping he would finally defend me, he would just sigh, this deep, exhausted, theatrical sigh that made me feel like I was a massive burden on his life. "Elena, please. Brenda is trying so hard to unite this family. Stop being so dramatic. You need to learn how to compromise. You're older than your years, just be the bigger person. Compromise." That was his favorite word. But the compromise only ever went one way, my way. The real breaking point, the moment the final, frayed thread tying me to my father permanently snapped, happened during the spring of my senior year of high school. Since I was 10 years old, my dad and I had talked about my college fund. After my mom passed, a portion of her life insurance payout was put into a dedicated, locked savings account meant specifically for my education. It wasn't millions, but it was around $45,000. Enough to cover my tuition at the excellent state university I had dreamed of attending since I was a kid. We talked about it constantly. It was my safety net. It was my mom's final gift to me. In April of my senior year, I got my acceptance letter. I was so incredibly excited. It was the first piece of good news I had received in years. I ran upstairs from the damp basement, holding the thick envelope, desperately looking for my dad. I found him in his home office, sitting across the desk from Brenda. They were looking at a large stack of financial papers, bank statements scattered everywhere. I burst in, smiling for the first time in what felt like months. "I got in. Dad, I got into state." He looked up. He didn't smile. The color actually drained completely out of his face, leaving him looking pale and sick. Brenda just sat there, sipping her herbal tea, looking at me with dead, flat eyes, like I was a stray dog that had wandered into her immaculate living room. That's great, kiddo," he mumbled, shuffling the papers quickly, trying to hide them. I walked over to the desk, too excited to notice the tension. "We need to send the enrollment deposit by Friday. Can we go to the bank tomorrow to pull the first cashier's check from Mom's college account?" The silence in the room was deafening. You could hear the antique grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Tick, tick, tick. My dad looked at Brenda. Brenda gave him a very slight, slow nod. Permission. "Elena, sit down," he said. His voice was shaking. I didn't sit. The dread was instant, pooling in my stomach like ice water. "What's wrong?" He took a deep breath, avoiding my eyes. "The college account. Elena, it's not there anymore." I stared at him. The words genuinely didn't make sense in my brain. "What do you mean it's not there? It's a locked savings account. Mom set it up. I have the statements from 2 years ago. I was the primary trustee," he said, aggressively rubbing his eyes. "Last year, Tyler got into some legal trouble. Really bad trouble. He was looking at actual jail time. He needed a high-profile defense attorney. And Madison's private high school tuition went up, and Brenda's real estate commissions were down because of the market. The contracting business was struggling to make payroll. We had to use the money to keep the family afloat. My ears started ringing, a high, piercing whine. You used my dead mother's life insurance money to pay for Tyler's lawyer? What did he even do? Brenda finally spoke up, her voice dripping with an unbearable, sickly sweet condescension. Tyler made a youthful mistake, Elena. Boys will be boys. Family steps up for family. We didn't want him to get a permanent criminal record. It would ruin his life. And honestly, considering your average grades, we didn't think you'd even get into a 4-year program. We figured you'd just go to the local community college. It's much cheaper anyway. You don't need a fancy degree to do bookkeeping. I ignored her completely. I looked directly at my dad. Dad, tell me she's lying. Look me in the eye and tell me you didn't give my mother's money to Tyler. My dad finally looked up, his eyes watering, but there was no apology in them, just weakness. I'm sorry, Elena. I really am. But you can take out student loans. You're so smart. You'll figure it out. Tyler isn't as resilient as you. He's sensitive. He needed my help. He isn't as resilient as you. That phrase, that was the curse of my entire life. Because I was quiet, because I was capable, because I didn't scream and throw tantrums and manipulate, my dad decided I didn't need him. He punished my independence by sacrificing my future to fund their toxic dysfunction. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. The betrayal was so deep, so absolute, and so profound that it bypassed anger completely and went straight into a cold, terrifying, clinical numbness. "Okay," I said quietly, just that one word. I turned around, walked down to the basement, and started packing. Not garbage bags this time, actual suitcases. I was 18 years old. I had a part-time job working night shifts at a 24-hour diner, exactly $840 in my personal checking account, and a rusty 2004 Honda Civic my grandfather had left me. I moved out that exact night. I didn't say goodbye. I carried my heavy suitcases up the stairs, walked right past my father sitting on the living room sofa, and walked out the front door. He didn't try to stop me. He stood on the porch and watched me load my car in the dark. As I pulled out of the gravel driveway, my headlights swept across the house, and I saw Brenda standing in the second-story window, my old bedroom window, holding back the curtain, watching me leave. I swear to you, even in the dark, I could feel her smiling. She had won. The house, the money, the man. It was all finally hers. If you're listening to this and wondering why I didn't fight back, why I didn't hire a lawyer to sue him for the trust, you have to understand the psychology of emotional exhaustion. When the person who is supposed to be your ultimate protector actively chooses your abusers over and over again, fighting back feels entirely pointless. You don't want their money anymore. You just want to survive. You just want to be free of them. The next 6 years were the hardest, most grueling years of my entire life. I crashed on a friend's sagging couch for 3 weeks until I found a horrible, tiny studio apartment on the bad side of town. The lock on the door barely worked, and the heater was permanently broken. I worked 3 jobs. I went to the local community college during the day, waitressed at the diner at night, and did freelance data entry and bookkeeping on the weekends. I barely slept. I ate ramen noodles, canned beans, and whatever mistakes the diner cooks let me take home. I accumulated student loan debt that kept me awake at 3 a.m. in cold, paralyzing sweats. But I survived, and more importantly, I succeeded, because I had to. Failure literally meant starving. I transferred to the state school anyway. I graduated top of my class with a degree in accounting and finance. I had developed a deep, borderline obsessive knack for forensic accounting, following money trails, identifying bad debt, analyzing restructuring assets, and finding hidden liabilities. I poured all my trauma, all my suppressed rage, and all my feelings of worthlessness into my career. By the time I was 26, I was an auditor for a major corporate financial firm. I was making a high 6-figure salary. I paid off every single cent of my student loans. I bought my own beautiful, modern townhome in a gated community. I built a quiet, peaceful, incredibly secure life completely on my own. Nobody could ever kick me into a basement again. And where was my father during this entire decade of struggle? He was a ghost, a complete phantom. He didn't come to my high school graduation because Tyler had a crisis over a bad breakup with a girlfriend. He didn't come to my college graduation because Brenda had booked a luxury family cruise to the Bahamas 6 months prior, and the dates, unfortunately, conflicted, but we'll toast to you on the deck. When I was hospitalized with severe pneumonia at 22 from working too many double shifts in the winter, he visited me in the hospital for exactly 15 minutes before checking his expensive watch and saying he needed to leave to help Madison pick out a dress for a charity gala. He would text me on major holidays, just generic, soulless messages. "Merry Christmas, kiddo. Hope work is well." Every time I made the mistake of looking at his Facebook page, it was a knife twisting in my chest. Photos of him, Brenda, Tyler, and Madison. Matching pajamas on Christmas morning, ski trips to Aspen, fancy steakhouse dinners. They looked like the perfect, wealthy, deliriously happy American family. I was completely erased. To the outside world, to his country club friends, Richard had 2 beautiful children, Tyler and Madison. But because I am an auditor, and because my dad's commercial contracting business was local, I knew how to look at public records. I heard the rumors through industry contacts. I knew the cracks were forming behind the glossy photos. Tyler had dropped out of college after exactly 1 semester. He tried to start a luxury streetwear brand that failed spectacularly in 6 months. Then he tried to open a boutique fitness gym that never even got permits. Then he got into high-risk crypto day trading, leveraging money he didn't have. And who was funding all of this? Who was bankrolling failure after failure? My dad. My dad was pulling the profits out of his 30-year-old contracting business and pouring them straight into Tyler's endless delusions. Brenda demanded it. She manipulated him daily, convincing my dad that Tyler was a misunderstood entrepreneurial genius who just needed the right seed money to build an empire. Madison, meanwhile, absolutely refused to work any job, expecting a massive monthly allowance to fund her travel influencer lifestyle on Instagram. They were bleeding him dry. Mathematically, it was unsustainable, but my dad was so terrified of losing Brenda, so terrified of being a lonely old man in an empty house, that he just kept writing the checks. He mortgaged his dignity and his business to keep the peace. I watched it happen from a distance. I felt a twisted, complex mixture of deep pity and intense, nauseating disgust. But I stayed far away. I had drawn my boundary. My life was finally safe, and I wasn't going to let their toxic storm touch my shores until last month. Before I tell you about the night everything exploded, the night the universe finally delivered the bill for 15 years of betrayal, I need to say something to anyone listening who is currently playing the martyr for their family. If you are bending over backwards to accommodate a toxic partner or entitled siblings at the expense of your own dignity, wake up. The children you are abandoning will learn how to live without you, and the parasites you are bankrupting yourself for will leave you the exact second the money stops flowing. That is exactly what happened to my father. It started on a Tuesday afternoon. It was raining heavily in the city. I was sitting at my desk in my office, reviewing a massive corporate asset liquidation file for a client. My phone buzzed on the glass desk. It was an unknown local number. I didn't usually answer unknown numbers, but something made me pick it up. Hello, this is Elena. Elena, it's Dad. His voice sounded entirely different. It wasn't the confident, booming voice of the contractor I grew up with. It was hollow, raspy, thin, like he had aged 20 years in a single week. Hi, Richard, I said. My tone was perfectly flat. I had stopped calling him Dad in my head years ago. There was a long, ragged silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing heavily, almost hyperventilating. I need your help, kiddo. Please. I know I haven't been there. I know I messed up, but I have absolutely nowhere else to go. I'm going to lose the house. I froze. My pen stopped moving over the ledger. What do you mean you're losing the farmhouse? The story poured out of him, a frantic, pathetic confession of financial suicide. And as an auditor, listening to the sheer scale of the stupidity was physically painful. 2 years ago, Tyler had come to my dad with a guaranteed, bulletproof business proposition. He wanted to start a high-end commercial landscaping and excavation company, but Tyler needed massive capital to buy the heavy machinery, excavators, loaders, flatbeds. Because Tyler's credit was completely destroyed from his previous failed ventures, no bank would touch him. So, Brenda went to work. She guilt-tripped, manipulated, cried, and threatened to leave until my dad finally broke. He agreed to help. But my dad didn't just co-sign a modest business loan. He took out a massive second mortgage on the farmhouse. He put up the deed to his own contracting business and all of his professional equipment as collateral for a high-risk commercial loan. He essentially handed Tyler the financial keys to his entire life's work. And what did Tyler do with $500,000 of leveraged cash? He didn't buy machinery. He leased 5 luxury trucks under the company name. He paid himself an absurd 6-figure CEO salary. He hired his deadbeat friends as consultants. And he took out even more high-interest, predatory private loans under my dad's corporate umbrella to cover his massive trading losses in the crypto market. Then, the final nail in the coffin hit. Tyler took a massive $150,000 upfront payment for a massive commercial retaining wall project. He did the work completely wrong, cutting every structural corner possible to save money. 3 months later, the wall collapsed during a storm, destroying the client's property and severely damaging a municipal water line. The lawsuit was instant and devastating. When the forensic auditors dug into Tyler's company to see if they could pay the damages, they found the massive fraud. The commingled funds, the unpaid federal taxes, the ghost employees. The whole thing was a fragile house of cards, and the wind had just blown it over. Because my dad was the primary guarantor on everything, the creditors bypassed Tyler's empty LLC and came directly for my father's assets. "They're taking the business, Elena," my dad sobbed over the phone, his voice cracking violently. "The bank froze all my operational accounts on Friday. I can't even make payroll for my guys. The foreclosure notice on the farmhouse was posted on the front door this morning. Tyler packed his car in the middle of the night and left the state. He won't even answer my calls." I sat in my ergonomic office chair, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the gray city skyline, feeling absolutely nothing. Just a cold, terrifying, absolute calm. "Where is Brenda?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My dad let out a sound that was half choke, half scream. She served me with emergency divorce papers yesterday morning. She said she refuses to be married to a man who can't provide security. She claimed her real estate income is completely separate, and her lawyers filed an immediate injunction to keep me away from her personal accounts. Madison blocked my number on everything. They're gone, Elena. They packed up the moving trucks while I was meeting with the bankruptcy lawyers. They took the furniture. They took the artwork. They took everything. He was crying now. Deep, ugly, gasping sobs that echoed through the phone. The kind of crying that makes you intensely uncomfortable to listen to. "I have $400 to my name," he choked out. "The bank is legally locking the house on Friday at noon. I don't have anywhere to sleep. I don't have a car. They repossessed my truck. I know you have a guest room at your place. I saw pictures of your house online. Please, Elena, I'm your father. I'm begging you on my hands and knees. I'll sleep on the couch. I'll sleep on the floor. I just need a place to stay while I try to figure this out. I want you to pause right now and really imagine this exact moment. The man who let his new wife exile his grieving teenage daughter to a freezing, concrete basement. The man who literally stole his dead wife's life insurance money to pay for his stepson's criminal defense lawyer. The man who missed every single milestone of my life to go on luxury vacations with the people who just destroyed him. Now, stripped of his money, abandoned by the parasites he actively chose over his own flesh and blood, he was crying on the phone, begging to sleep in my guest room, the room in the house that I paid for with the tears and blood of working 3 jobs. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence hang there on the line. I wanted him to hear it. I wanted him to feel the crushing weight of a decade of his own horrible, selfish choices pressing down on his chest. "Dad," I finally said. I used the word deliberately for the first time in 10 years. "Yes? Yes, kiddo, I'm here. I'm listening." His voice spiked with desperate hope. "When I was 18 years old, and you told me my college fund was gone, do you remember what Brenda said to me in your office?" He hesitated. "Elena, please, I can't do this right now. My chest hurts." I asked if you remember. My voice was like absolute ice, a glacier. She said family steps up for family." "That's right," I said. "And do you remember what you said to me?" Silence. "You told me I was resilient. You told me I would figure it out. You told me I could take out high-interest student loans because Tyler needed your help more than I did. Because Tyler was sensitive. Elena, I was wrong. I was so blinded. I was so stupid. I am resilient," I interrupted, my voice perfectly level, devoid of any anger. "I did figure it out. I built an entire beautiful life from the garbage you left me with. But I am not your safety net, Richard. You spent 15 years investing your love, your money, your credit, and your loyalty into Brenda and her kids. They are your family, not me. It sounds like you need to call Tyler and ask him to step up. Or maybe Madison has a spare room in her apartment. Elena, he's gone. He ruined me." Madison laughed at me. He screamed, pure panic taking over his voice. "I have no one. You are my blood. You are my daughter. I stopped being your daughter the exact day you let a stranger kick me out of my own bedroom," I said. "Please, just for 1 month. I'm your father. You owe me." "No, Richard. I owe you absolutely nothing. You're just a man who used to know my mother." I hung up the phone. I didn't block his number immediately. I just set my phone face down on the glass desk. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. For an hour, I didn't move. I just stared at the wall. I felt this insane, overwhelming mixture of profound grief for the father I lost 15 years ago, and absolute, intoxicating power. The scales of the universe had finally, violently balanced themselves. But the story doesn't end there. because desperate, entitled people do not respect boundaries. They never have, and they never will. 3 days later, it was Friday night, the day the bank legally locked the doors on the farmhouse. It was pouring rain outside, a massive, cinematic thunderstorm, the kind of rain that washes the streets clean. I was sitting on my expensive, comfortable couch, wrapped in a heavy wool blanket, drinking tea and reading a book. The fireplace was on. I felt safer than I had ever felt in my life. At 11:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. Not just a polite single ring. Someone was leaning their entire body weight on the buzzer. And then came the pounding. Heavy, frantic, desperate fists hitting my solid oak front door. I knew who it was. My heart sank, but my resolve hardened into steel. I walked to the foyer, turned on the porch light, and looked through the security peephole. It was my dad. He was soaked to the absolute bone. His thin jacket was plastered to his skin. He looked pathetic. He looked 15 years older, hunched over, shivering violently in the cold wind. Next to him, on my covered porch, were 2 large black garbage bags and a small, soggy cardboard box. That was it. That was everything Richard had left in the entire world. 2 garbage bags, the exact same way I had left his house 10 years ago. I stood there for a long time. I could hear the rain crashing against the roof. I could hear him muttering to himself, knocking again, his knuckles hitting the wood. "Elena, I know you're in there. I see the lights. Please. My car got repossessed this morning. I had to walk 4 miles from the bus stop in the rain. Please open the door. I'm freezing." I slowly unlocked the deadbolt. Click. I opened the door, but I kept the heavy metal security chain engaged. I only opened it about 3 inches. The warm yellow porch light illuminated his face. The water was streaming down his cheeks, mixing with tears. "Elena, thank God," he gasped, his teeth chattering, reaching a wet, shaking hand toward the gap in the door. "Can I come in? Please. I'm so cold." I looked down at his hand, the strong, calloused hands that used to build tree houses for me when I was 7. The hands that signed the check that gave my future, my mother's money, to a criminal. "No," I said quietly. My voice didn't waver. His face dropped. The relief shattered instantly. "Elena, please. It's raining. It's freezing out here. I don't have anywhere to go. The shelters are full." "Why are you here, Richard? I told you on the phone. The answer is no. They locked the farmhouse today," he cried, gripping the edge of the doorframe. "The bank took the keys. Brenda's lawyers froze the last joint accounts. I literally have $0. I just need your couch. Please, Elena. Have some mercy. I'm an old man." "Mercy?" I repeated the word. It tasted bitter and metallic in my mouth. "Did you have mercy when I was crying in the freezing basement because Brenda threw out my mother's photo albums to make room for Tyler's gaming setup?" "I didn't know she did that," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "I swear to God I didn't know." "You knew. You watched her do it," my voice finally raised. The anger, the 15 years of suppressed, agonizing, suffocating rage finally boiled over. You watched her tear me down piece by piece. You watched her kids steal my life, my peace, my money. You funded it. You paid for my own erasure with a smile on your face. I was stupid. I was lonely. I loved her, Elena. I just wanted a family again," he cried, leaning his forehead against the wet doorframe, sobbing openly. "And I loved you," I yelled back, my voice echoing on the empty porch. "You were my father. I was a grieving child who lost her mother, and you sold me out for a woman who despised me. You gave her everything, Richard. You gave her the house. You gave her the business. You gave her my college fund. And now she's done with you, because you have absolutely nothing left to give." He put his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking violently under his soaked jacket. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything. I'll work for you. I'll clean your house. I'll pay you rent when I get a job. Just don't leave me out here in the dark." I looked at him. I really, truly looked at him. I searched my soul, my heart, my memories, for any shred of pity, any lingering daughterly affection, any instinct to save him. I found nothing. Just a cold, empty void where my love for him used to live. They had killed it a long time ago. "Family steps up for family," I said softly, echoing Brenda's vile words one last time. "But we aren't family anymore." I reached forward and pulled the heavy oak door shut. I heard him cry out, a raw, guttural sound. "Elena, no, please, God, please." I locked the deadbolt. I engaged the bottom lock. I set the house security alarm with a loud beep. I didn't look out the window. I walked away from the door, went upstairs to my warm, dry bedroom, put in my noise-canceling headphones, and got into bed. I slept for 9 straight hours. It was the deepest, most peaceful, most restorative sleep I have had in my entire adult life. When I woke up the next morning, the storm had passed. The sun was shining. I walked downstairs, made myself a cup of expensive coffee, and looked out the front window. The porch was empty. He was gone. It's been exactly 3 weeks since that night. I found out through an old family friend in the contracting business that my dad is currently staying at a local municipal men's shelter downtown. He has formally declared complete Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The contracting business he spent 30 years building is being liquidated at auction by the bank to pay off Tyler's fraudulent loans. The childhood farmhouse, the house my mother loved, the house I was exiled from, is going up for public auction next month. I actually looked at the listing. It looks terrible. Brenda's divorce proceeded with terrifying speed. Because my dad put his business assets up as collateral for Tyler's debt, Brenda's personal real estate holdings were largely shielded by her vicious lawyers. She walked away completely clean, keeping her money and her luxury cars. Tyler is currently under federal investigation for wire fraud and is hiding out in another state, refusing to speak to anyone. Madison is living in a high-rise apartment Brenda pays for, complaining constantly on Instagram about how toxic men and narcissistic stepfathers have ruined her life and caused her trauma. They completely destroyed him, just like I knew they would, just like anyone with eyes could see they would from the very first day. My dad made his choice 15 years ago. He chose the illusion of a perfect, glossy family over the biological daughter who actually loved him unconditionally. He bought their affection with my future, and the exact second his checkbook ran dry, they discarded him like trash on the side of the road. People, mostly extended family members who never bothered to check on me when I was working 3 jobs, have messaged me asking if I feel guilty. If I feel bad knowing my 60-year-old father is sleeping on a cot in a homeless shelter, while I sit in a beautiful, warm townhome with a fully funded retirement account and a luxury car in the driveway. My answer? Not even a little bit. Guilt is an emotion reserved for people who made a mistake. I didn't make a mistake. I executed a boundary. I protected the life I bled to build. If I had let him in that door, he would have brought his chaos, his crushing debt, his emotional weakness, and his endless drama into my sanctuary. He would have drained me, just like they drained him. I refused to drown to save someone who watched me sink. I am sharing this story today because I know for a fact there are people out there listening right now who are currently serving as the sacrificial lamb for their family's dysfunction. You are the one paying the bills. You are the one keeping the peace. You are the one swallowing your pride, biting your tongue, and letting yourself be disrespected while the toxic people in your family get rewarded for their horrible, selfish behavior. Stop. Please, just stop. Stop setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. They will not thank you. They will not save you when you burn to ash. They will just complain that the fire isn't bright enough. Walk away. Pack your bags, even if they are just garbage bags. Build your own life. Protect your peace, your finances, and your mental health with absolute, ruthless aggression. Because one day, the house of cards will fall, the golden child will fail, the narcissistic parent will run out of victims to bleed dry, and when they come knocking on your door, standing in the rain, with nothing left but the devastating consequences of their own actions, you are allowed to close the door. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've survived a family dynamic like this, if you've ever had to cut off a parent to save yourself, please drop a comment below. Let me know I'm not alone in this. Because, honestly, the only family I care about now are the people who understand what it takes to survive the people who are supposed to love us the most. Take care of yourselves, and keep your doors locked.